Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers. I'm with John McCann tonight, our co-host here on Campaign for America. For those of you who are just joining us, Campaign for America broadcast this particular broadcast, if you will. I don't know, John, if that sounded right. We broadcast the broadcast. But let me get John here for a minute, John. All right. I'm getting a little tongue-tied. But anyway, we're on 6:30 p.m. every single week on Wednesday nights, folks. And we tackle some of the most incredible stories that are not being talked about on the media. And if they're being talked about on the media, you're not getting the full story. Well, here at Campaign for America, we intend to do that. And John, some good news. Our social media platforms, Twitter, over the past 2 weeks, we've got 2,000 more followers. So we're now over 42,000. We're 1,000 more on Instagram. And our Facebook audience is growing rapidly, as well as CloutHub and Rumble. So I guess, John, the word's getting out that here's the place to be.
Well, Steve, we haven't been on in the last few weeks. I missed your face. Looks like you may have gained a few lbs over Turkey Day. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I got to tell you, John, I actually had put on a suit. Had a hard time, John, getting that jacket on. So I'm going to have to lose a few pounds.
Well, you look good, Steve. You look good.
Well, thank you. You too, my friend. Folks, tonight we've got a lot of topics we want to talk about, but three major points that John and I are going to talk about. The first thing, we've been warning for over a year that Joe Biden is going to drag us into a war that we cannot win, ladies and gentlemen. The question is, are you willing to send your sons and daughters to a war far, far away from the United States? We're going to tell you where that war is going to take place and maybe when it's going to take place. In addition, we're going to be talking tonight on how can anything like this happen in America, where a governor, in particularly the state of New Jersey, decides that he's going to have the New Jersey State Police arrest who? Lawmakers, the very people that we elect to office. And I know John McCann's going to weigh in on the constitutionality of that a little later. But now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to a young man who I got to know, and I know, John, that you know him, Darrell Kipnis. Darrell is an attorney here in New Jersey, a terrific guy, a terrific Republican, a great American. And Darrell, I want to welcome to the broadcast here on Campaign for America.
Steve, it's great to see you again. And John, it's great to be with you as well.
Well, thank you for joining us. Now, Darrell, I have been told, and I've been reading up on some of your activities, and you are on the front lines defending the unvaccinated workers who are either losing their jobs or lost their jobs. So if you could be so kind to share with the public what you're doing now, who you are, where your office is, and then let's talk about what you're doing with regard to defending these great Americans.
Thank you so much, Steve. You know, they say that I'm doing the Lord's work right now, and I kind of tend to agree. Right now, there is nothing preventing, in addition to all the various federal mandates coming down from the Biden administration, some of which are under various stages of attack in the various federal appellate courts and circuits across the country. Employers can make their own decision. By law, it's supported by guidance issued by the EEOC, that they can mandate an individual to be vaccinated for COVID-19 as a condition of their employment, subject to various exemptions which are available under applicable state and federal law. Obviously, under federal law, you have Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. And then in New Jersey, you have the New Jersey Law Against Discrimination. So I'm helping people that find themselves in the predicament that maybe they never thought that they would ever be in, where they are now being told that they have to get the jab or lose their job. And obviously that offends a lot of people's religious beliefs, or it may conflict with a medical condition that they may have. And the unfortunate reality is that employers are represented by counsel that help them develop these policies and the so-called interactive processes that they have in place to determine whether somebody has a whether somebody has expressed a valid basis for a religious or medical accommodation, or two, whether the company can accommodate it. People need to be represented by counsel too. I think everybody needs to be on an even playing field with these things. And I'm happy to level the playing field for as many people as I possibly can. And I've been helping public employees, private employees. We love our first responders. I have a lot of police officers that have come to me that I'm happy to take care of, nurses, doctors, other personnel in the hospitals. All these people were hailed by the mainstream media as heroes during the pandemic, or a lot of them were. And now that they're being forced to do something which offends their religious beliefs, now they're not being cast in such a positive light, and they're kind of being looked down on. I don't understand the dissonance with that, but I'm here to help these people nonetheless, and I'm happy to have been able to help out employees in major hospital systems throughout the state of New Jersey. I also handle people in Pennsylvania as well, and people that work for major corporations. We've got a whole variety of people from all different vocations, and all of them are being told that they have to get the vaccine or potentially lose their jobs, which is ridiculous. The data out there from the CDC is what a lot of these employers are relying upon in saying that it's an essential thing for people to receive the vaccine. But we all hear the stories out there and we all know for a fact that whether somebody's vaccinated for COVID-19 or not, they can get it or transmit it to others. And now you have this Omicron variant, which we just had our first confirmed case in California right now, where you had the CEO of Moderna come on the other day and say, hey, the vaccines are not going to be effective against this. So essentially, if these mandates continue and we don't push back against them, we're going to be in a hellscape where, there could be a new variant every day and there could be a 12th booster, and it never ends. Once you surrender autonomy over your body, your rights are gone. And when you give up your rights, you don't get them back.
Well,
So people
we
like
have
myself
talked
and
about.
others need to take a stand and, work within the framework of the law right now to help people have their beliefs protected and have their medical conditions protected, so that this vaccination craze or whatever it is you want to call it, it's not a one size fits all kind of thing. It should be a choice. It
Darryl,
shouldn't be forced upon you.
if I may, Darryl, John, you and I have talked about the issue of individual rights. I was on the air again today talking about this new variant that's now coming around. And we've on this broadcast, we have shared with people, you do what you want. You want to get a vaccine, that's your business, not mine, and it's not the government's business. You don't get a vaccine, that's your business. And John, we've talked about this, that it's an individual rights issue. But now with this new variant coming on, more people are apt to lose their jobs. But John, some people are asking this question, and Darryl, you could weigh in on this too.
Sure.
John, the courts ruled that the Biden's mandates are unconstitutional. That's what the headline was. Is that just for federal workers, or is that for everyone?
So the decisions that you're referring to, there have been two key federal decisions. One just early this morning out of Louisiana, where the judge ruled for the entire country that the status quo is to remain, meaning that there are no mandates. They ruled that the plaintiff in that case is likely to succeed on the merits, and the judge wrote about the extensive intrusion on individual freedoms and rights. And not only that, but he also looked at it from the government's perspective, and that it was a violation of the separation of powers between the three executive branches. That if you wanted to have such a mandate, Biden's way of doing that would be through the normal legislative process, not through the administrative scheme that we currently have. So that decision today was applied to the entire country, whereas the decision you're referring to, Steve, that came out yesterday was just 11 states, the 11 plaintiffs in a different jurisdiction. I believe that was Tennessee. So right now, the federal government cannot mandate. Now, that's a very different type of authority than the states have. The states have what's known as police powers. and the state constitutions are more general than the United States Constitution as it relates to the police powers. And from a state's perspective, under the Police Powers Act, which is where they derive a lot of their health and safety and emergency powers, they can do whatever they want. So we've got essentially a legal three-ring circus for those who aren't legally trained, or even for some people who have some skill with law. So lawyers are trying to figure it out themselves. But the state of New Jersey is in a very interesting place right now. And I don't know if Daryl knows this or would agree with this statement, but we just had an election where prior to the election, we had whistleblowers on Project Veritas from New Jersey stating that
Right.
after the election, Governor Murphy was going to do whatever he wanted to do, but he wasn't making it part of the campaign. Now, Steve, he did say in a press conference almost 2 weeks ago, when asked what he was going to do, he said, well, you could look to New York City and some other states and pretty much see where we're going with this.
California.
So, California. Thank you.
And Colorado.
Now,
Colorado.
I have a question, Daryl, with regard to what John just said. Now, you've got a lot of these clients. Some of them have lost their jobs. Can they now sue their employers? Can they get some sort of a satisfaction out of suing? Because
potentially the legal, landscape of the mandates and the issue of the various different ones are, rapidly developing. The other recent thing that came down was the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. See, the federal courts are set up where there's a number of different circuits that cover a number of different states, and all of them feed up to the Supreme Court, being the one that is the Supreme Court of the land. And the Fifth Circuit decision was with respect to the OSHA mandate. Now, what the Biden administration tried to do through OSHA was say that private businesses, when you're in Medicare, the medical field or not, or whether you have contracts with the federal government or not, if you have 100 or more employees, if you don't mandate all of them to get the vaccine, we're going to fine you. And that was challenged by states that have, attorney generals and, gubernatorial administrations that, want to protect their people and want to stand up for constitutional rights, unlike New Jersey. In those states, what you had was, they challenged it, and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said they put a stay on the OSHA mandate, saying that, it can't move forward. And following that decision, the OSHA actually came out and said that they're suspending any and all efforts to implement this mandate based on the decision, essentially, that one circuit. So my thought with the new ruling that came down today with the CMS, which is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, that's the one that attempted to apply a federal mandate to healthcare workers. I imagine that maybe CMS may be coming out with a similar statement to OSHA, I would hope within a day or two, or maybe sooner or later, depending on when it is, that they're suspending enforcement of that particular mandate, because the Biden administration does not want to appeal these things to the Supreme Court. If they're losing at the appellate level, they don't want these cases going up to the Supreme Court with the justices that are on there that were appointed and confirmed during the Trump administration, because they kind of have a feeling where that might go. So there is, ultimately, if they do get to the Supreme Court, and I'm hoping that the Supreme Court eventually takes on a case concerning the New York State mandate, where the state of New York attempted to eliminate religious exemptions, which are protected by federal law from their state healthcare workers. And that case, I believe, is on appeal to the Supreme Court as well right now. And I don't know whether the Supreme Court has agreed to hear it. There was a similar mandate in Maine a few weeks ago that the Supreme Court declined to take up because they felt that it hadn't been sufficiently briefed.
Well, it seems to me there's just this thing goes in circles all across the United States.
It does. There's no beginning and no end.
But now we only have a minute or left on this segment. So a couple of things. One is, if you could share with our audience where anybody could get in touch with you, if they need some guidance on this, please.
Yes, if you need help with any type of employee vaccine mandate issue, the office number is 732-595-5298. And you can message us through Kipnis Law Offices on Facebook Messenger. That's probably the best way to get in contact with us. So, we read those messages and we get people set up, to have their requests worked on. I have a great process that, I involve the clients tremendously in the whole thing from start to finish. And I've been very successful in getting people's rights protected.
And John, I
So
understand you
we
worked
handle
with,
all in New Jersey and Pennsylvania.
and John, I understand you had worked with Daryl on a case here in New Jersey.
Yes,
We are, yeah. We're
Yeah,
co-counsel on one
you
right
guys,
now.
you guys look like a great team. That's good stuff. All right, one
We
more
we go
question.
back a long time. We both ran in the 2018 cycle
Ah,
for Congress.
yeah, well, you guys ran honorable races, and maybe one night we'll talk about that. One more thing, fellas. One more thing. This is something that is off this topic, and please keep this answer concise. All right. The United States Supreme Court is hearing oral arguments on Roe versus Wade. Now, I was on the air today on a number of TV networks talking about this, and I was asked a question, and I was asked to just sum it up in like a very brief sentence. So here's the question that I was asked, and I'm going to ask you. What do you think is going to happen with this Supreme Court ruling? Are they going to uphold, the Mississippi ruling? Are they going to strike it down? Are they going to get rid of Roe Base's word? But very shortly, in a short, concise way. Let's start with you, Daryl. What do you think the ruling is going to be?
Well, the thing that you have to realize is that obviously we don't know how Justice Roberts is going to go. He's always the enigma in all these types of cases. And even with some of Trump's appointees, they have not always come out on, they're obviously judges and they have to use, their, independent, judgment in accordance with the law to decide these cases. But not all of them have been on our sides of the issues all the time. So I can really handicap it. I couldn't really say or predict what they might do, but we have to keep our eyes peeled and see what happens.
John?
Daryl's a smarter lawyer than I am by not weighing in what the Supreme Court, how they would decide. But in the interest of our podcasts, I'll stick my neck out. And I'll say this. I've never seen a right ever taken away in America. Whether it was decided correctly or incorrectly, I have never seen a right dispersed with, up until COVID, actually, I should say. Okay. I just never seen that done in our history. And conservative judges appointed by Trump or Reagan, whoever, they do believe in the legal principle of stare decisis. And to overturn a case is an extraordinary remedy that a conservative principled judge is going to have trouble with, regardless of what the moral implication may or may not be. As Daryl noted, it's decided in a vacuum under the law. And I'm concerned as someone who sides on the side of life that people may be disappointed here. But I understand from the legal principles, Steve, that I go back to, I just cannot see a Supreme Court undoing a right that's been established.
Well, my answer, fellas, was that, of course, they're not going to overturn Roe versus Wade.
I don't think they will
I don't
either.
believe they'll do that. I'd love to see them do it. They won't. However, I do stand on the position that they will send it back to the states. And that's something that I think is the best we're going to get out of this. And hopefully there'll be many states following. It was Mississippi. Was that the state that they're arguing? Or do I have that state wrong? Mississippi or Missouri? That's banning abortions. I forgot.
The case is Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health, and I believe that's a Mississippi law.
Mississippi, that's right. So I believe they're going to uphold the Mississippi law, but that'll eventually go back to the states. And well, let's see where we go. Thank you, Daryl. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Hey, thank you so much, Steve. It's my pleasure. Great seeing you again.
And we'll see
Always
you soon.
great to talk to you.
Thank you very much. Daryl
right.
Kipnis, folks, one of the kindest gentlemen I know, along with John McCann. Kind guys, good guys. And you talk about people running for office with honor, with dignity. These two guys. Thank you so much, Daryl. John, I want to get to a topic that is starting tonight to make the news more than it has over the past few weeks. And it's making the news more tonight because, unfortunately, the Biden administration had sent a very clear message to Vladimir Putin, and it is not a good message. And folks, I've got to tell you, we have warned, based on the research we've done and the intelligence and information we get in from a lot of sources, we have warned that Joe Biden is going to drag all of us, this country, the United States of America, into a war that we don't want to be in, that we cannot win. Now, you're hearing this conclusion that we cannot win from a retired lieutenant commander who had worked for the Office of Naval Intelligence. 25 years, folks. So I kind of know what I'm talking about when it comes to this issue. Now, why am I saying it is something we can't win? Well, John, based on what we're seeing, there are about 100,000 Russian troops on the Ukrainian border. I understand there was a report yesterday or the day before that Russian tanks from the north are now coming into that area. And it seems like, nothing's confirmed, folks, but it seems like it appears that Vladimir Putin may launch an invasion into Ukraine. Now, there's nothing that indicates to us that it is imminent, all right? But you kind of know when you're in the military who may be preparing for war and who may not be preparing for war. So, John, the Secretary of State, Biden's Secretary of State, apparently is sending messages to Putin. If he gets out of line, whatever that means, there'll be severe consequences. John, severe consequences. So what are the severe consequences? Well, they're talking about sanctions. They're talking about all kinds of other issues regarding energy. But John, in my mind, severe consequences is direct military action. We don't want to go down that road, John McCain.
Steve, this is what Democrats do. I mean, it is astonishing to me. They constantly put this country into a box from a geopolitical perspective. They make threats because they don't want to appear weak at home. But everyone knows they're weak. And I go back to Barack Obama's line in the sand, where he said, I draw a line in the sand. He pounded his chest from the podium. And then again, what happened later? It is astonishing to me how people in the Democratic Party and in the leadership, whether it's the president himself, his national security team, his own chief of staff, they don't seem to learn the lessons. You would think just to avoid appearing weak at home, they wouldn't be doing the same playbook routinely over and over and over again. Now, whether or not we can win the war or should we even be in the war is really just, these are points that you and I talked about weeks ago and months ago. We saw this coming. But the problem is, who if you're the Russians, who are you evaluating is making the calls in Washington? Is it the president? Because the president half the time doesn't know his name. He doesn't know where he is. Okay. So if I'm the Russians, I would be cautious just from that perspective alone, because do they want to accidentally tripwire a wide-scale conflict because the Democrat in the White House can't appear weak? So it's a chicken and the egg situation, but clearly what they've done is unwise. And one final point, as you note, they've talked about economic sanctions. We let the Russians have their pipeline to Europe. Okay, essentially the funding for this war, whatever that amount, you could say that the Americans, by allowing Putin to sell that oil from into Europe, we've allowed them to have the Europeans fund this aggression that they're doing on the border. And it's also a huge distraction from the number one enemy of the United States, and everyone knows that that's China. And you've got to call into question some of the recent propaganda or information, whatever you want to call it, that's out there with regard to Joe Biden's son organizing a deal for the Chinese corporation, which is all minimally 50% owned by the Chinese government, to buy cobalt. And the millions of dollars that he made, and an $80,000 diamond was given to him. All those reports about Biden's son. The Putin thing to me is a political distraction. They're making noise, the secretary, but I don't think the Democrats have ever shown the stomach or the will or the intelligence on what and how to choose to go to war.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the Biden administration also had their emissaries, if you will, speak to our NATO allies. And the NATO allies are telling the Biden administration, don't worry, we have your back. We're going to support any moves against Russia, and on and on and on. Except there's one problem with this explanation from NATO. When it comes to sanctions, it'll probably support the Biden administration. When it comes to some economic punishment, yeah, they'll support the Biden administration. What's going to happen, folks, when it'll require ground troops in Ukraine? Do you think France, Germany, England, and other NATO allies are going to send their troops to Ukraine to shed the blood of their children on that soil? For what? For what, John? Listen, I lived through the Vietnam War era, mission creep, all kinds of things went on, and we ended up in the loss of thousands upon thousands of American young men and women. And furthermore, and John, you just touched upon the little of this. Think about this, folks. So now you've got, in the eyes of Vladimir Putin, by the way, for those of you who are young, you might want to look up the name Vladimir Putin. When I was working in naval intelligence back in the 80s, we saw the name, the head of the KGB, folks. This guy's smart. And if you think, and John, someone said this to me tonight, Vladimir Putin knows exactly what he's doing, what moves he's going to make. And in the event there are sanctions against this country, those consequences may be severe, but they may be severe on us, the United States, from Russia. Now, we have the greatest war fighters in the world right here in America, the greatest equipment, the greatest war fighting mechanisms. But in order to defeat an enemy, we learned in Iraq, especially, you need ground forces. Now, as all this is going on, John, with Russia, and you hit the nail on the head, a distraction, do you think President Xi sit back in his living room and watch the news on how U.S. troops and Russian troops are confronting each other in Ukraine? John, I'm going to ask you this question. It's rhetorical, but people need to hear it because I'm sure your thinking is along lines of many of us who are involved in this. What do you think President Xi is going to do when he sees Russia, if Russia does this, invade Ukraine?
He's going to go into Taiwan.
Exactly.
Period.
Now, why do we say that, folks? Because as all this stuff is going on in our country with the problems we're facing domestic-wise, we just shared with you what's happening in Ukraine. Well, let me tell you what's happening in China. Right now, the Chinese military are conducting war games on the Chinese coast. And you know what they're doing, folks? They're invading. They're actually having war games, invading their beaches, invading cities, invading towns. They're war gaming on the mainland China. To do what? To play games? No. They're practicing, folks. They're practicing, in my view, and based on my experience, an invasion, a ground invasion of Taiwan. In addition to this, folks, and you can look this up anywhere, it's all over the internet now, the Chinese Communist Party have built mock-ups, models of U.S. Navy fleets in the South China Sea, just like what Japan did during World War II. Before they invaded, John, you know, they had mock-ups of our carriers, of our destroyers. Well, the Chinese Communist Party have made models, mock-ups, if you will, of our U.S. Navy fleets, and they're bombing them. They're bombing runs with fighter jets, with any type of missile that is going to be used against us in the event we decide to defend China. So, John, you're a dad, right? You're a dad. You have children. So, as a parent, I'm going to ask you, where do you want your children to fight, Ukraine or Taiwan? Where, John?
Well, I don't want them fighting anywhere, Steve. And the only reason why these aggressions are taking place is because the world sees what we see when we watch our president. We look at a man who's physically frail, who's cognitively compromised, and overall has been wrong on every foreign policy initiative he's ever been involved in. And that's not me saying that. That is the former national security advisor to President Obama saying that about this president. And you know, Steve, in intelligence, our enemies take a look at the politicians. They have them up on a board somewhere. Who could be the next senator? Who could be the next president? And you know, Steve, that their intelligence services has done thorough profiles on all of our leadership, as we do to theirs. Okay, we have a great military intelligence capability, you know. But the fact of the matter is, we voted in a guy who hid in a basement for three months prior to the federal election, and they ran a campaign of "I'm not him," meaning they weren't Trump, and they vilified Trump on in every aspect. And they actually said in their rhetoric that he killed people with COVID. That's how far the rhetoric went. had gone in the political campaign. And now the American people are having buyer's remorse, as the polls show us. But Biden's approval rating is historically the lowest of any president, going back to Johnson, just before he decided not to run again. So our enemies are going to capitalize, and they know they have a short window in which to do this, because the American political cycle, after a year from now, Steve, is when the Democratic primary and the Republican primary for president starts. It's just 12 months away.
Well, John, that leads me to that question, or what I said before. I'll share with you when this war may start, how it's going to start, and where it's going to start. And John McCann just alluded to that. And my assessment, folks, President Xi, Vladimir Putin, any enemy of ours, and we got a lot of them out there, including, by the way, Iran, who now the Biden administration wants to sit and talk with them after the Iranian regime said that one of the conditions of these talks would be the total destruction of Israel. They actually said that. And then, John, and did you see where when the allies went in to speak with the Iranians, the United States representative was shown the door and he was put in a little office? Go, America, go sit in the corner while the big adults come here and talk about how we're going to destroy the United States. Folks, this is what weakness is all about. You see the picture behind me? Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, he knew peace through strength. He built up the most powerful military on the face of the earth when he was president. And then, unfortunately, you had some Democrats come in and tore apart, but Donald Trump came along. And he rebuilt the military. And John, it's very interesting because Ronald Reagan scared the living daylights out of Mikhail Gorbachev. And the Soviet Union never made a move aggressively against the United States or our allies because Gorbachev knew what Reagan would do. Then Donald Trump comes in and the same thing. I always said, as Hillary was looking at the reset button, Donald Trump made it a respect button. Vladimir Putin, he was concerned about what Donald Trump may do if he got out of line. And why? Because Trump represented strength. Reagan represented strength. Now we had Obama represented weakness, and we got a real weak president at this point. And John, one of the things that I've been doing, I have been talking to some military people and some abroad, and we're being laughed at. We're being laughed at because while our troops are being discharged, if you will, because they're not getting a vaccine, while our troops are in classrooms on how to be nice, understand that, well, this may not be a male enemy, it may be a female enemy, or that might be this type of enemy, or that's X, or you got to fill out the papers, not male or female, but X. Folks, I've got to tell you, if you don't think that our enemies are watching every single thing going on here, John, I'm glad you mentioned it, profiles. You said it all. There are intelligence agencies in these other countries, as well as ours, who know exactly what's going on in the classrooms, in the academies, and our military instruction books. They probably got copies of them. They're laughing at us while we're doing that. All right, folks, while we're worried about being politically correct, the militaries of the Chinese Communist Party, of Russia, of Iran, and our enemies are building and building and building to do what? Not to cross a border or to get in a conflict with the United States where you're going to take out a rule book before you fire. They're going to come in and they're going to try to kill our young men and women. These are enemies of freedom. Enemies, folks. They want to destroy us. And here we are sitting back worrying about being politically correct. Right or wrong, John?
Well, going back to Ronald Reagan for a moment, if you remember, the Iranians were so afraid of Reagan that he was sworn into office, and within an hour and within 90 minutes, the hostages that were held under Jimmy Carter were released. That's how concerned they were with when you get a president that understands the world as it is, not the way the world should be, but dealing with the world as it comes to him. And when you have a president like that, as President Trump was, it certainly keeps the demons and the barbarians at the gates. I want to add one other thing, and I touched upon it. What is the son of the president of the United States, while all this is going on with our military and our strategic position, Where is the Republican Party? Why are they not screaming from the top of the hills for an investigation into the ethics of Hunter Biden putting a deal together for our enemies who are about to probably invade Taiwan? Where is the Republican leadership on this issue, Steve? I mean, I'm at a loss for this. We don't hear about that. It just gets brushed aside. And I get all these emails and communications now. This senator is running for re-election, and he's talking about standing up against the communists. And I share that view. Of course, the communists in our own system have got to be overturned and thrown out of office. But I'm getting very concerned about the lack of leadership in the Republican Party and their lack and the ability to stand out and speak out to the obvious conflict and the obvious problems that are being created by this president's son. It just gets reported lightly on Newsmax or Fox News or a Breitbart, and then no one talks about it. But don't you think that is a significant problem? Is the Republican leadership in this case?
It is, John, and the problem, and we've talked about it, the Republicans are busy calling other Republicans names. I mean, let's face it, let's call it what it is. They're too busy, for whatever reason, going after other Republicans. Look, I get it, folks. We don't have Republicans that may believe in 100% of our conservative movement. I am a conservative, folks. I disagree with some of the policies that some conservatives are advancing and not supporting. But overall, look, these aren't bad people. Some of the people, John, what is troubling me, that are called names like rhinos or whatever. Not all of them, some of them. And some of them are not supporting the conservative issues that we want to advance. But some of them are war heroes. Some of them, John, were in two, 3 tours, whether it be Vietnam, whether it would be Iraq, to question their patriotism. My. But you see, the Democrats sit back and they laugh, John. You nailed it. They're watching Republicans more busy at war with other Republicans than against who? Not the Democrats, John. You said it. The communists, the socialists. So as Republicans, folks, we need to stand up and we need to say, hey, look, who's the enemy here? Look, the enemy are the socialists and communists in the Democrat Party and in the Republican Party. Don't think for 1 minute, folks, we don't have people in our party who are cozying up to socialism and communism. We are. Reagan saw it and nailed it, and he got rid of it. He did what had to be done, and he did it in a way that they wouldn't come back. Unfortunately, in our time now, we see them coming back. But that's for another day. The fact of the matter is, folks, here's the answer to the question. When, Lieutenant, do you think if there's a war, it's going to happen? It'll happen, folks, I believe, based on my own assessment of things, up to January 1st, 2023. Why? Because Vladimir Putin, President Xi, Iran, and other enemies of ours know full well if the Republicans take the United States Congress, game over for them. Game over for them. We have a Congress who's not going to sit back, a Republican Congress that's not going to sit back and see this nation and the national security of this nation or our allies get defeated in a war. It's not going to happen. So they're going to be proactive. Yeah, elect Republicans to office. We may avert a disastrous war. That's my guess. So just keep watching what happens between what I shared with you tonight, okay? And I'm not the only one who believes this. Others do. Between now and January 1st, 2023. John, what do you think of that assessment?
Well, again, they are keen to our political process. They understand when will be the best time to act because, as you point out, I don't know if they're concerned, Steve, so much about the congressional race. I think if the Republicans take control next year, the question is, are they going to impeach Biden, who may or may not even be in office by then? To be frank with you, he's so gone. But I do know that they are going to do something, in my opinion, sooner than later. I may differ with you, but you may have more information behind the scenes that I'm privy to. I'm just looking at it from the generalized reporting that I see, that everyone else sees. But my instincts tell me it's going to be sooner rather than later, because the fact of the matter is, if we do end up with a new president, whether it's Kamala Harris or Pete Buttigieg, whatever machinations these socialists try to come up with now, because can you imagine Kamala Harris as the president of the United States? Think about that for a second. I mean,
I don't think any Democrat conservative or Democrat moderate could imagine that.
A title does not confer seriousness and capacity of an individual. Just because she has the appellation Vice President of the United States does not mean that she has the capacity to do that job. We all know her beginnings in politics in California. It's well documented and admitted. So, I mean, I can't imagine a bigger disaster, but the current situation is untenable as well. That's why I think, Steve, they're going to act rather quickly and decisively. You know, why wait if you're them? What's the point of waiting for the Republicans to win or lose the election? The big change for them will come as who wins the next presidential election. And with these scare tactics and the variants and all this stuff, one has to wonder if they're trying to plot another vote by mail campaign in for next year. That's the only way the Democrats are not going to win.
If I had my way, you know what? I'd go back to the old days. You walk in. You show them your ID, you sign the book, and you don't have anything to do with the internet. You push the little mechanical button, and you got both sides watching the results with the little mechanical tabulation. That's how you prevent fraud.
You don't want to close the shades in Philadelphia at 1 o'clock in the morning and throw all the observers out and then start to count ballots. You don't want trucks across New York state lines with ballots in them. You don't want to do that. You know, like that kind of election, Steve. I'm surprised.
There's a Lisa just asked a good question. Why can't we do that? Lisa, I'll tell you why we can't do that. The fact is we could. But you see, as a people, we have seceded our rights. We have made the king the king. As a people, we need to stand up together. And this is why we go back to when we're fighting each other, they sit back and laugh and they can get away with anything they want. That's a good question. We can do that. But as John said, and John, I'll tell you, nailed it. Not only do we have a lack of leadership in America, we truly have a lack of leadership in this party, the Republican Party. But Campaign for America folks and other organizations like ours are working hard to remedy that. One more thing, folks, before we go, right here in New Jersey. Could you imagine? The governor of the state of New Jersey decides to tell the state police in New Jersey that they will be able to arrest GOP lawmakers who violate his vaccine mandate with regard to entrance into the State House. Now, out of all that was said, John, in the press release that I read, one thing did irritate me, and I did tweet about it. The superintendent of the New Jersey State Police, Patrick Callahan, really irked me when he made a statement, John, that was clearly, in my view, political, kind of saying, well, all they got to do is obey the edict and there's no problem. Well, Superintendent, if you're watching tonight, I tweeted out, I hope you're watching. I happen to like you. The state police in New Jersey, one of the greatest police organizations in the world. But do us a favor. Stay in your lane. That's right. You are the superintendent of the state police. You're not supposed to represent a Democrat, a Republican. You're supposed to do what? Uphold the Constitution of the United States and New Jersey, uphold those laws. When I was sworn into office as a police officer, way back when, I rose my right hand, put my hand on a Bible, and I swore allegiance to indeed God, but also to the Constitution. No police officer, no superintendent of state police, especially you, Mr. Callahan, Superintendent, Colonel Callahan, especially you, people had a lot of trust and a lot of confidence in you, and they liked you. But when you went off the rails a little bit and appeared to have supported what Phil Murphy mandated, well, John, if I'm wrong, you're the lawyer. Please tell me. I believe A, it's an unconstitutional mandate, and B, the superintendent of state police should not be supporting publicly a mandate coming out of the governor's office. If he's got to enforce things, that's one thing, but to suggest that the Republicans, all you got to do is take the jab and we solve our problem. John?
Well, it's clearly unconstitutional under the New Jersey Constitution. You can't interfere with the state representative voting. In fact, it's gone. There are cases out there where we know there have been state representatives speeding to get to Trenton to try to vote, and they can't even pull them over for speeding. So it's clearly unconstitutional. And I'd ask the state superintendent of the state police this question: what's the vaccine rate of the state police officers? Maybe he should check his own backyard first before he starts, as you say, stay in his lane. what maybe he should make public what the compliance rate is with the vaccines for state police officers. I'm very curious what that would be, because I know across the state, the sheriff's department have very low compliance. Police officers are starting to retire. The best of them are not going to comply with this. So I'm just curious. Maybe he needs to just take a look at his own department first and report to the public, what that number is. I think we have a right to know. And I talked to a Republican legislative assemblyman earlier today, and he said if anyone enforces that, he welcomes that, because that person, that individual officer, will be violating his constitutional rights, and he will be suing that officer not in his official capacity, in his personal capacity. And if that's coming from the top officer of the state police, I hope he's done some asset protection, because because as a lawyer, that's where I'd go. I'd go right at him and say, this is unconstitutional. You know it. And you'd have no good faith basis to try to enforce this mandate from the governor. And I'll see you in court, and I'm coming at you personally.
John, I wonder why, and I could be wrong, why I haven't heard one elected Republican in this state say what we said. Challenge the superintendent of the New Jersey State Police to explain himself, if in fact he meant that, if in fact he went down the road, and I interpreted it as that way, of supporting a mandate from the governor that was clearly unconstitutional. It goes to your point. Where's the leadership? I got to tell you, when these guys are running for office, they're all over the place, all over the news. Oh, we're fighting here, folks. We're fighting there. After there's an election, everybody's quiet. John, have you heard any of our elected officials stand up and challenge in a very dignified, honorable way? I'm not saying yell at the guy, but they need to get an answer from him.
I believe there will be a response from some of the assembly people.
Well, I hope so, folks.
And Steve, it's going to be a legal one, and it's not going to be pretty. And it's not going to be pretty for those who are trying to enforce it, because the Constitution spells it right out. There isn't one case that they could rely on to enforce this. Not one legal precedent that they can rely on. So the idea of them doing it in good faith, or to enforce the orders, maybe the governor will pay their personal bills. I don't know, but I know there's a handful of Republicans that are going to take strong legal action.
My concern, folks, and I know it's John's and probably is yours as we close out tonight's broadcast. You'll always see on some of my tweets, communism on the march. When we get to a point in this country where we have elected officials willing to turn the police against the people, and this is what I interpret this as on the part of Governor Phil Murphy in New Jersey, turn the police on the people, you have truly gone down a very, very, very dangerous path that none of us want to go down. We need to keep that in mind. So keep in mind what we shared with you this evening, especially about Vladimir Putin, Russia, and China. Keep in mind what we shared with you about the terrible position that some of these politicians are putting our hero cops in. But also keep this in mind. When there are dark clouds over this country, when we're in dark waters, when we're in the dark winter that Joe Biden promised and delivered on, always remember this, folks. There is light at the end of the tunnel. There is a God above, and I've said this over and over again. There is a God above who has the shadow of his wings over America. And I'll leave you with this illustration. I've repeated it time and time again. I'll repeat it again, so please forgive me, but never get tired of what I'm about to share with you. When President Abraham Lincoln, in his darkest hours, in his darkest winter, in his darkest moment, when President Abraham Lincoln saw himself at his Red Sea that he couldn't cross, he was in the Oval Office, his door was open, and he got on his knees with the Bible in his hand with his head down like this. His chief of staff walked by and said, "Mr. President, what are you doing on your knees on the floor?" He says, "Well, I have this book." It was the Bible. And he looked at the chief of staff and says, "I have nowhere else to go." So, folks, when you have nowhere else to go, I can tell you, when I have nowhere else to go, I go to the one where I'm going to find the truth, comfort, and hope. And that's the Lord. That's the Lord Jesus Christ. So keep that in mind as we move forward. John, before we sign off, any last word?
No, I think what New Jersey is about to experience over the next few months is going to be a governor who wants to run for president and try to win the Democratic primary. And in order to do that, he's going to have to come out with policies that are going to be very left in nature. And he's already told us that, you know, he's going to more than likely require vaccine cards to get into restaurants and things of that nature. And I got to tell you, that's going to bring on litigation where the state is finally going to have to show some science to support all this nonsense. Someone like me who's COVID, just had tests 2 weeks ago, that my antibodies a year later are still kicking. And I've been suffering, as you know, Steve, from COVID long haulers. There is no need for me to take a jab because of my immunity. And the second thing is taking a jab is a threat to my health because of the uncertainty what it does to people with long-term COVID. So if he does that, there's going to be a lot of people in similar to me. They estimate in the United States there's 100 million people who had COVID. That's a lot of natural immunity. And more importantly, that's a lot of people who don't need the vaccine. And if you don't need the vaccine, that's 100 million people that the pharmaceuticals wouldn't be selling the vaccine to. So you can see the implication here is about money. It's certainly not about policy because, you know, when you see people say, I'm the science, like Dr. Fauci keeps saying, a state bureaucrat is science. This is very medieval. This is like right out of the Spanish Inquisition. Okay, this type of thinking. And I thank God, Steve, that the founders wrote the Constitution, and through all the fighting and compromising that we did, that they did to have a document to create a more perfect union is still surviving. And because that's why I fight. That's why I say the things I say. It's in my mind to protect those liberties and freedoms and equality of opportunity that we all want our country to be, not this totalitarian mentality that we see from mostly from the Democratic Party. There's some Republicans that go along with this nonsense too. The governor in Maryland, the governor of Massachusetts, particularly those guys. I don't even know what to say about them. But I pray, Steve, and I'm grateful to the founding fathers for writing that document to give me some guidance and some light and give me purpose and why I do this podcast.
Well said, John McCann. Thank you so much for those words of wisdom. Folks, remember, keep our nation in prayer. Through it all, God's still in the business of answering prayers. Don't ever forget that. See you next Wednesday night, 6:30 p.m. here on Campaign for America. Visit our website, campaignforamerica.com. It's right there on the red band under our names here. And just have a great week, folks. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.